more specifically, I will be diving into the theme of fate and free will in ancient Greek culture. So what is the term fate? So in ancient Greek culture, they find the term fate as a predetermined outcome ordained by the gods or a cosmic force. So basically what this means is when a human was born, right, anything that happened in their lives were already predetermined by the gods, and anything they said or tried to do to change that fact, just, it wouldn't happen. In ancient Greek culture, they also believed in the fates, which is coined as the term morai, and the morai represented in a way of three goddesses, and I will show that to you. So the three goddesses of fate. So the first one is Clotho the spinner, and she was basically responsible for every mortal's like when they were born. So she determined where and when a person would be born. The next goddess of fate is Lachesis, and she took the thread of yarn that Clotho started to spin, and she measured the yarn with a pole, and then she basically determined how many years of a life each person should get. She was also in charge of assigning each person's their own destiny. Last but not least, we have Atropos, the goddess of death. She represented the past, and she basically, she took the thread and then she determined at the snip of her cut the death of each of mortal's life. These three goddesses were very important in terms of ancient Greek culture and mythology. And yeah, so before I go on, I want to go back and talk about the role of the oracles, and more specifically, the oracle of Delphi. So these people, or the oracles, were considered the human mouthpieces of God. So they were basically the middleman between like the divine world and the mortal world. So people like kings, generals, just common noblemen would come to these oracles to seek guidance in their everyday life. These oracles were believed to possess the will of insight into the gods and to, in the fate of individuals. So we can see in Oedipus, right, when he goes to talk to the oracle of Delphi, he hears about this prophecy that, he's gonna go kill his father and marry his mother. So Oedipus, after hearing this, his actions, like he decides to leave Corinth, his adopted mother and father, right? So you can see that the oracle had a profound impact on Oedipus's life and the decisions that he decided to take. Next, I will be going over free will in ancient Greek culture. So free will in the ancient Greek culture was basically the same view that we had. It's basically the capacity for an individual to, make their own decisions and choices and from external influences. I wouldn't say a lot, but some famous Greek philosophers such as, Socrates, Aristotle, and Plato, they all pushed this concept back in ancient Greece. Plato, he tied the idea of free will to the exercise of rational thoughts and moral deliberation. While Aristotle agreed with that, he also acknowledged the fact of, external influences in our lives. So Aristotle's view was more of like free will and fate could coexist with one another, while Plato was just more arguing that free will is more of an independent thing to fate. So we could see that, the concept of fate and free will was a major part of the ancient Greek culture. Next, I wanted to talk about the free will and fate's impact on ancient Greek values, especially hubris. So hubris, as he just went over, is the excessive pride in oneself. But more specifically in Greek history, it's the excessive pride of a human that puts him equal to the gods. right? And in ancient Greek culture, hubris was seen as a huge character flaw, and ultimately and usually would lead to a brutal ending or tragic ending for the said character. Especially in Oedipus, right? He hears about this prophecy that he is going to kill his father and marry his mother. So he tries to run away from this fate. So basically he's saying like, he's trying to defy the gods and try to change his own outcome. So that means he's putting himself like as the same as the gods. And as we all know, he unfortunately had a tragic ending where, you know, he blinded himself and then put him into exile and suffering for the rest of his life. We can also see this hubris or excessive pride in King Laos, right? He heard the prophecy that his son would one day grow up and kill him. So his decision was, instead of keeping the baby, he decided to leave the baby to, you know, avoid his own fate. And as we all know, eventually Oedipus killed King Laos on the road. So we can see that hubris is it's not so much that the ancient Greek culture put a lot of emphasis on it, it was more of the opposite, where hubris was seen as a very bad thing in ancient Greek culture. Last but not least, I just wanted to talk about fate and free will and the influences on modern day literature. So we've all seen Harry Potter, right? Everybody, or at least have heard of it. So Harry is learning about this prophecy, and you can see the quote in that picture right there. It's pretty long, but basically I'm just gonna summarize what it says. So the prophecy is that Harry and Lord Voldemort will eventually fight to the death, and either or would die at the end. And in the books, Dumbledore is talking to Harry, and he's basically telling him that, you know, it's not this prophecy it's not the prophecy is the reason why you're trying to kill Lord Voldemort, but it's your own volition, your own free will, right? Because I don't want to spoil anything, but in the book or in the movies, Lord Voldemort is the one who killed Harry's Potter.
I think after 15 years, you can be confident that no spoiler alerts are necessary after 15 years. Yeah. If you haven't read the book, that's on you.
Just a big
15 years. Yeah, right.
But yeah, so Lord Voldemort, you know, killed Harry's parents, right? So it's not that the prophecy that Harry is deciding that he wants to kill Lord Voldemort. It's his own emotional stability and his own rational thoughts that is bringing him to this decision. Another example is The Matrix, right? So Neo finds himself in a self-constructed reality that was created by the architect, which means that everything was programmed and it was already predetermined, right? And in the movie, Morpheus, another main character, he, you know, gives the famous, the red pill or the blue pill to Neo. And that's basically saying, you know, you can either choose your fate or you can choose, you know, on your own free will to do what you want. And of course, you know, Neo chooses the red pill, which resembles free will. And so we can see that not only is the theme of fate and free will had a huge impact on ancient Greek culture, but even in today's modern day literature.
Okay, before we give you a round of applause, thank you. Eddie, first question.
I like your presentation.